This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, corn and soybean prices were volatile following USDA's supply and demand report. Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, but we will be hearing from Max Armstrong a little bit later on in the program. Last week saw the release of the July supply and demand estimates from USDA, and we'll talk through those numbers with Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing here in just a little bit. But we also saw a report from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. They note that some tractors are selling well in 2023, notably high horsepower models. Two-wheel drive tractors with more than 100 horsepower see sales 25% above where they were a year ago. Four-wheel drive tractors are up nearly 22% year over year. In spite of that, overall sales are still down because those smaller, less than 40 horsepower units aren't moving nearly as quickly. The soybean crop growing in the farm fields across this country is making progress this year, but there are always discussions on how to best get that crop to its final end user. Joining us now for that discussion is Megan Kaiser. She's a Missouri soybean farmer currently serving as chair of the United Soybean Board. And Megan, fill us in first. How are things looking in Missouri?
Well, it's been a dry year for Missouri. I think quite a few areas have been battling drought conditions, but our farm in particular, we would love a few more showers as we start to watch as the grain fills.
I think you and a lot of other folks throughout the Corn Belt are sitting in that same boat. Now, Megan, let's talk about soybeans getting to that final destination. Infrastructure is vital to American soybean growers, isn't it?
Well, that's right. It's important to every single one of us. So we can't get our grain from our farm to the global marketplace without having really an interdependence on each other and our nation's infrastructure.
What are some ways that the Soybean Board has worked to encourage that infrastructure build out?
So it's pretty exciting that we were able to, kind of like farmers normally do, sit around a coffee table and say, what are the things that are keeping us back, that are holding us back from being the most sustainable, reliable deliverer of soy in the global marketplace. And one of those areas is our waterway infrastructure. And so the first place that we looked to engage was the dredging of the lower Mississippi River was a project that had been approved by the federal government. And we wondered what's keeping that from happening. And it turned out that there was a portion called planning and design that had not been funded. And so soy farmers said, what if as a checkoff, we're able to invest in things like studying something or planning for something or designing something, and it was a natural fit to say, what if we invested $2 million in making sure that the planning and design of that project were fit? And then it was met by investment of $245 million, not only by the federal government, but the state of Louisiana. And that project, it was just a really great template. It was one of the first times the Soy Checkoff was really able to engage. And it was through our partnership with the Soy Transportation Coalition, the U.S. Soybean Export Council, and the American Soybean Association, and our public partners to really make that come to fruition. And that dredging is happening today because of the barrier of entry that the checkoff knocked out.
It is, Megan. It's so neat to see what you can do with leverage. You mentioned the importance of getting these crops on barges. I understand the Soy Checkoff has been instrumental in helping refurbish some lock and dams. Is that right?
That's correct. So one of the ways that we can engage, the checkoff, we can't own anything, but we can break down barriers of entry. And one of those ways is helping out with the studying and the planning and engineering that happens before any of these infrastructure projects even take place. And so it's really exciting that we, as farmers, are seeing something tangible and we're having a real impact.
Megan, before we let you go, any final thoughts for growers here as we get deeper into summer?
Well, I hope that you are proud. As we all have our challenges on the farm, but I hope that you're proud of the work that your checkoff is doing as we work together and we pool our resources to have an impact, not only in the Gulf of Mexico, on the Mississippi River, but even at the Port of Grays and the Pacific Northwest, that from sea to shining sea, we are working on improving our reliability and sustainability of getting our crop to the global marketplace.
That's Megan Kaiser, chair of the United Soybean Board. Megan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. It's time to look at the commodity markets for this past week. Definitely saw some news events move prices, and joining us to help make sense of them is Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, it looks like the trade is still grappling with the size of this crop growing in the fields.
Yeah, it sure is. And USDA, kind of reaffirmed that, and especially in the corn market, didn't it? With the increase in acres and a little bit lower yield, but still, we got a lot of bushels coming ahead of us by this fall.
We do. Dwayne, let's talk through these numbers. USDA used the new acreage report of 94.1 million acres. Did they make any adjustments to corn yield in this most recent supply and demand report?
They did. They lowered the corn yield 4 bushels an acre off of trend line, which of course trend line would be that 181.5, which is a record. So the bulls got part of what they wanted. And what I mean by part of what they wanted is they got the lower yield, but they didn't quite drop it as much as the bulls really wanted to. It's still a decent sized crop. And if you read kind of through the report a little bit, you'll see that USDA was kind of hinting at the conditions and the weather moving forward is pretty favorable for corn production. So that kind of gave me the idea that they're hinting at that yield could actually increase in upcoming reports as long as the crop conditions continue to improve as well.
Dwayne, that highlights one of the things we've seen this growing season, which is a change in risk. At the start of the season, there was drought, there was concern we might not have the crop. Starting now, the concern is we might have a bigger crop than we'd anticipated, correct?
Yeah, you got to stay flexible. I mean, up here in Northeast South Dakota, I was going into the spring with a ton of snow and thinking that the total principal crop acres are too high. We're going to have more prevent plant than anticipated. And we got past that May 25th late plant date for Northeast and South Dakota and North Dakota. And so farmers could have stopped. It was wet in the fields, and they could have chose prevent plant, but they kept right on going, Mike. Farmers want to farm, and they planted corn and kept going, and we ended up with more acres. So you're right, you got to stay flexible. We went from me thinking that we wouldn't have enough acres to too many acres, and now too many bushels.
Dwayne, does that make you more aggressive in hedging this year's production?
1,000% yes, Mike. I mean, I was pretty friendly all winter long, thinking old crop stocks are too tight, and we have any weather scare at all, we're going to go flying higher. And I don't think that was a horrible assessment of the market, but now, past the 4th of July, where we're at, seeing the USDA report I saw, I am a horrible bear when it comes to the corn market, because right now, USDA has us increasing export demand for corn year over year by 450 million bushels. There's only one way to do that, Mike, and that's with lower prices. So either that demand comes down and we have even more bushels than the 2.2 billion they're projecting, or we have to go dramatically lower in price. Maybe $4 futures is in the cards.
All right, risks are changing, Dwayne. That's true in the corn market. It's also true in the soybean market. Reduced acreage there, no change to soybean yield from USDA. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They didn't change the soybean yield, and probably rightfully so. A dry, warm June probably just helped to get the last acres in up here in the northern plains where we had all the snowpack. But August is really the month that matters when it comes to soybeans. And with this El Nino weather pattern, Mike, if we have a wet, cool August, we could actually have a yield above trend line. And remember, a few less acres in North Dakota, which is a little bit lower yielding state.
Dwayne, even though we've got lower acres, that big yield means carryout's still growing in soybeans. Is that right?
It did. We ended up with an ending stock of 300 million bushels, but USDA had to trim some parts of demand to get there. They lowered export demand, which did they do that to just make sure we ended up with 300 million bushels for an ending stock? Or option 2, did they see this huge crop out of South America, namely Brazil, and say, we're just going to export less soybeans this year because of the competitiveness they have? Both options are probably a little bit correct, Mike.
All right. Dwayne, did we see any adjustments to the Brazil crops in this most recent WASDE report?
They increased the corn crop ever so slightly, 1 million metric ton. I believe the soybean crop was left alone, which they should have a good handle of that. But look for that corn crop in Brazil to get even larger. From what I'm hearing, these yields are just phenomenal down there. They're behind normal harvest pace, which every producer will kind of tell you if corn harvest is taking a long time, it probably means they're handling more bushels than they anticipated.
Lots to watch. We'll have more conversations with Dwayne Bussey about these markets when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're talking commodity markets with Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing. And Dwayne, watching the volatility in the soybean markets, do you have any extra incentive to get some hedges on for this new crop?
Well, I think so. I don't think it's the panic sell I'm suggesting we have to do in the corn market, but above 1350 November beans, I think, is an all right place to sell, because we do have to keep in mind the Brazil crop size and the fact that Argentina will probably come back with a much larger crop next year as well. And really, the market has no reason to go above $14 unless we have a hot, dry August here in the United States. So above 1350, yeah, go ahead and put hedges on. Does it have to go below 12? Probably not, because of our tight situation.
All right, Dwayne, looking back at that corn acres, 94.1 million acres of corn. That's a lot of acreage of feed grains in the ground. I've got to imagine livestock producers are looking at this and feeling pretty optimistic about feeder cattle. What's your take on the cattle complex as you look out over the summer?
It got more bullish after yesterday's report, that's for sure. You're right. If we start on the feeder side of things, we are, of course, at record high prices around this 250. But, can we go to 300? Probably, absolutely. Remember, the last time we made new highs in the cattle market was 2014, and the old highs were 174 for feeders, and we ran at 240. So you think of the percentage difference there, and you tack on inflation. 300 is probably in the cards for feeder cattle. Now, I know I probably shouldn't be putting numbers off because it'll go to 298 and someone will come back and tell me how I was wrong. But let's just point out that I'm pretty bullish the feeder market.
Dwayne, if you're bullish, if $300 feeders is a possibility, what does that do with live cattle pricing?
Hopefully they go up, but that is the ultimate problem, Mike, I have, and it's tough. Now, USDA did increase beef production in yesterday's report by about 90 million pounds. But yeah, if you're going to have $300 feeders, you need high price fast to break even, right? But I think that's what producers are going to do. They're going to walk their corn off in steers and heifers in feedlots this fall. Higher prices, how high, I don't know, because what the numbers I'm thinking we need to get to make the break even work tells me how does that work economically? How do people afford going to the supermarket and paying that much for meat? So therein lies the problem, and probably what kills this rally eventually.
Dwayne, that being said, looking at these elevated live cattle futures prices all the way through the fall into early 2024, are you managing any risk out that far in this market, or is it just too volatile?
No, we are, Mike, and the biggest reason is the capital investment that producers got to get out there. If you have to pay this high price for feeders, I don't think you can just go off of some broker in Northeast South Dakota saying he's bullish and say, oh, we don't need to manage our risk. But because I am bullish and I want the upside, it's either put options or we're really liking the LRP insurance here if producers want to look at that. You lock in your floor, then have that upside potential still.
Dwayne, we've seen a bit of a rally here in recent weeks in the hog complex. Is this something that could help support cattle prices as we get deeper into summer? Well,
absolutely. I talked about the high price in meat and how high can cattle really go. The thing is that if they're gonna go that high, they need pork prices to go up as well, because otherwise they'll be too cheap and people will switch. Gosh knows, inflation, even though it's lower than we anticipated, it's still out there, and it's showing in everyone's credit card bill as they open it up every month. So no, but I do think lean hogs will continue to go higher. I'm not an expert in the hog market, but I've got some smart people that I listen to that say this hog market is going to just keep going in 2023 and 2024. So look for higher prices there as well.
Higher prices down the line. Dwayne, real quick before we let you go, inflation back in the news. Is the Federal Reserve going to keep hiking interest rates?
They probably will one or two more times, but with the CPI number the other day coming out a little bit lower anticipated, it does show that inflation is maybe slowing down a little bit. Now, a little detail on that CPI number. Remember, it's year over year. So a year ago, we already had inflation. So to say it's only 3% is a little misleading. It's kind of like a cattle on feed report. So you got to look kind of in between the numbers. But a little bit more higher interest rate, and then they probably cool off.
All right, folks, that's Dwayne Bussey, Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Our traveling tech correspondent, Chad Colby, puts the miles on his truck looking for the next new thing in agriculture, and occasionally he goes someplace familiar.
It's after the 4th of July, and you might recognize where I'm standing this week. I'm in Decatur, Illinois, home of the Farm Progress Show. And for 2023, we're going to be here in Decatur. As you can see behind me, there's already plenty of activity started here on the show site. I talked to the show manager this week to get a little update on what we can expect to see at this year's show. And let me tell you, Matt was pretty enthusiastic for a couple major reasons. Number one, he wanted to share that the Various Industry tent is the largest tent they've ever had at any show. It's over an acre in size. As far as how many vendors are going to be at this year's show, I'm excited to tell you it's over 99% sold out. Essentially, the show is full, which is a great thing. Another thing he wanted me to mention to you was this. All the major players, John Deere, Kubota, Case IH, Klaus, AGCO, you name it, all have major product announcements at this year's show. Matt and I talked about it. He didn't know if that's ever happened in the history of the Farm Progress Show. So there's going to be a lot of new things to see, certainly more than ever. As you can see from the aerial imagery right here, the crops look very decent down here. Obviously, they plant an earlier maturity corn so they can get it ready for harvest in time to debut at the show. I love seeing all the demos in the field, and I know many of you come to the show for that reason. Expect a lot of great tillage demos. Certainly harvest demonstrations. We love those. So make your plans for this year's show. I know my first show was actually in Brimfield, Illinois when I was a young man back, I believe in '83, somewhere in there in the early '80s. And I love coming to this show, and I can't wait to see all the new technology. We're looking forward to seeing all of you there, and I'll leave you with one more thing, Mike. Matt assured me over the next few weeks we'll get back with you and share some more inside details on what you can expect at this year's show. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. And I tell you what, seeing some of that severe weather move through southern Illinois, it's nice to see those crops upright there at the Farm Progress Show site. Folks, get it on your calendar, August 29th, 30th, and 31st in Decatur, Illinois for this year's Farm Progress Show.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Are you ready for Charlie's tour of whatever state he selects next?
I'm always ready to learn more about the agricultural states of America with our friend Charlie Behrens in Pivot Bio. This week, he's taking us out west, not quite all the way, about halfway to Colorado.
The United States of America can be very different from one state to another, but one thing every state has in common is agriculture.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Behrens and welcome to the Agricultural States of America. We're going to test your knowledge about the agriculture of different states and hopefully give you a bit of appreciation for all of the great things that farmers are producing across America. Today we're headed to the Centennial State to see what agriculture looks like in Colorado. Now, when you think of Colorado, you probably think of the Rocky Mountains, the Red Rock Amphitheater, Colorado trails, skiing, snowboarding, hiking, and the rich tales of the Wild West. Or maybe some more recreational, I don't know. However, the agricultural industry is crucial to the state's economy by bringing in around $47 billion annually and producing a variety of products. Some of the top agricultural products and commodities in the state are cattle and calves, goats, hogs, dairy products, corn, hay, and wheat. Now, Colorado is consistently in the top 10 nationally for the production of barley, alfalfa, hay, wheat, grain, sorghum, sheep and lambs, potatoes, sunflower and foliage plants, proso millet, and even peaches. In other words, Colorado, ideal state to get the munchies in. Now, there was one thing in that list that you may not know off the top of your head. Proso millet. No need to Google it. I got you covered. Proso millet is a grain crop with a variety of uses, including birdseed, animal feed, and cover crop. But recently, a new market has emerged, and it can be used as an organic, gluten-free grain. Now, Colorado's reputation precedes itself when it comes to peaches. The Palisade peach, which is Colorado's official state fruit, is said to be sweeter than the Georgia peach. And before you Georgians say, them's 5 words, don't blame me, I just read it on Wikipedia, okay? And I know they say that you can't compare apples to oranges, but peaches are another story. How about them apples? The unique flavor of the Palisade peach is due to Colorado's climate, which has warm days and cool nights. This temperature change intensifies the sugars in the peaches and therefore the sweetness. Now, as to the question is who makes the better peach cobbler, that will have to be decided in a cook-off competition, and I volunteer as judge. Colorado grows these peaches on the western slope, but they don't stop there. They've got many other fruit orchards, such as apples, cherries, and apricots. And Colorado is the only U.S. state to lie entirely above 3,280 feet in elevation, which makes it the nation's highest state. And let's let the record show that I passed up on a marijuana joke here. Now, Colorado's elevation, geography, and climate play an interesting role in the quality and uniqueness of the state's crops. Just like how it affects the peaches, the same can be said for their grapes. Colorado's vineyards are the highest elevation of any vineyard in the U.S. at 4,000 and 7,000 feet above sea level. Nationally and internationally acclaimed Colorado wines are often made with traditional Vitis vinifera grapes. Some of the state's wines are also made from cherries, peaches, plum, and honey too, which is where Colorado got its unofficial slogan. If it's growing on a tree, in a hive, or on a vine, we're making wine. I just made that up. Rounding out on all that Colorado has to offer is a variety of specialty crops. The state's farmers raise bison, elk, ostrich, grow mushrooms, Anasazi beans, and even hemp. As a result of this agricultural diversity, you may have been able to enjoy some of these famous Colorado foods like Rocky Ford cantaloupe or Pueblo cherries, craft beer, and not to be forgotten, Rocky Mountain oysters. Word to the wise, save those suckers for date nights. Natural aphrodisiac. Google that and thank me later. All right, that's all the time we have for now, but you can always go to pivotbio.com/agstates, click on the show icon and explore more about the agriculture of your favorite states and test your knowledge to win great prizes and more. I'm Charlie Behrens, and we'll see you next time on the Agricultural States of America.
As always, Charlie, thank you for that update from Colorado. Max, you know, he highlighted the importance of livestock in the state of Colorado. Certainly a lot of production. They also do quite a bit of shows out there in Colorado, don't they?
You know, the National Western Stock Show comes along every January, and people have taken great pride in that. We hear from Mary in Denver all the time about the National Western Stock Show, and it's quite a festival. In addition to putting the livestock in the spotlight, and they have new facilities. They are expanding. They have great plans for the future. The dates for that show in 2024, I know Mary would want me to mention, January 6th through the 21st. It spans all of those days, pumps a lot of money into the Denver economy. So those folks, rightfully so, are quite proud of the National Western.
Have you had a chance to go to the National Western, Max?
Many years ago. It's been quite some time, but you know, it's been there 117 years or 116 years, something like that.
Yes.
So it's had an effect for quite a while.
Absolutely. There's a group of folks from Iowa who take the train to Denver every year for the National Western. I've always thought that would be a fun trip to do and see those animals up close.
It would be. A longtime friend of mine, the late Bill Couch, was a judge there for many, many years. We grew up together, and I was always hearing about the National Western. Oh, and Charlie mentioned Proso millet. That one is on the radar screen. That crop, we have a lot of folks who wonder about a crop that can be drought hardy. There's more coming up on This Week in Agribusiness. Stay here with us. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. It's no surprise that this season has been a challenging season from a weather perspective for growers across the country. And one thing we've seen is that genetic innovations in the crops themselves have really helped them perform well this year. One place where those innovations has come out of is BASF. Max has the chance to check in with those folks every so often for our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series. And recently, he had the chance to talk with Nick Fassler about the future of that organization.
BASF has been working with farmers for over 100 years. Nick, why is it important for you folks to continue to keep innovating?
Innovation really is our life force, is what's driving us. Without innovation, we'd basically become just a generic chemical manufacturer potentially.
Word has it you have some big product launches coming up for corn and soybeans.
First and foremost would be a new product for our Liberty franchise. So glufosinate has grown drastically with Liberty Link acres across the U.S., and it's a cornerstone of that grower's herbicide toolbox for that operation. So we're very excited to be bringing forward L-glufosinate, and it's powered by the Glu-L technology. And what this is really going to provide is a lower use rate of Liberty, but then also improved performance and expectations that you'd expect from that legacy brand. So we're not going to compromise on the adjuvant package and continue to deliver that consistency and excellent performance with those added benefits. And then the fun thing about that too, with a lower use rate, it allows future opportunities to build additional chemistry in there to bring growers a more robust solution down the road. The next one would be Certain herbicide, and this is a new corn offer for us. BSF, we have several offers in that corn pre-residual market, but Certain is really going to open up the doors to bring a new offer that really hasn't existed in the marketplace today.
Share with us the innovation story in cotton that BASF has, Nick.
So BASF has really become a key cotton player the last several years with our acquisition of Stoneville and Fibermax. And what we're excited about coming up here in 2024 is the launch of Accent Flex Cotton, which is going to enable multiple herbicides over the top via GMO HT technology. And a few of those are going to be Roundup Ready technology, Liberty Link technology, dicamba technology, as well as HPPD technology. And this system is really going to provide growers with the flexibility to tank mix and choose the right herbicides to tackle their troublesome weeds on their cotton acres. And we're looking at bringing that forward and really offering the best germplasm along with the most robust trait platform.
Nick, thanks for sharing with us the story of how BASF is approaching this helping farmers with the biggest job on earth. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Nick. It will be interesting to see where this innovation takes the industry of agriculture down the line. Folks, you can see all of our Plan Smart, Grow Smart episodes at the website plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Now it's time to take a look at the forecast. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, is it going to be quiet up in the Pacific Northwest this week?
It has been quiet, Mike. Maybe a thunderstorm here and there, but basically the story has been drying of soils, too dry for that matter, parts of Washington State and Oregon. And apart from that, we'll keep an eye on any thunderstorm potential that does get going this time of the year. Some of those thunderstorms are dry-based if you get into the northern extent of the hot ridge, which has been retrograding back and forth, one direction to another, but generally focused over Southern California, the Southwest, onto the Southern Plains. So we'll continue to get disturbances over the top of the western ridge, and we'll spark maybe a stray shower or two. Cool weather and shower activity really has been the story across the Canadian prairie, easing the fire situation out there, and more to come out there again for this week with another prod of cool air for parts of the Dakotas, Southern Canadian prairie, upper Midwest. The hot ridge is here, and again, maybe a couple of dry-based thunderstorms. We'll watch the lightning potential into the northern and central Rockies, and just scant moisture chances for the time of year into Washington State. Yeah, real hot, very hot, very hot. And here is the expansion of the hot ridge. And typically you would try to get a little more tropical moisture in, get the monsoon season a-going. Here we are mid to late July. Other than a stray shower, we just don't see it materializing right now. So bear with us here the best you can with the heat from the central valleys of California into West Texas and the Southern Plains. And there have been a couple of thunderstorms that have been able to bust the cap. There's another eastward progression on the heat wave into Oklahoma and Texas. Triple-digit stuff again, northern extent with systems over the top of the ridge there. Mike may again generate a couple of thunderstorms. Amazing what we've been able to do in easing the drought in those high plains areas. But again, coming at a price with all the hail and high wind.
Well, that's true. Greg, as you look at the Corn Belt, central part of the U.S. this next week, what do you expect to see there?
More of these ridge riding ring of fire storm clusters that kind of ride on a very strong west-northwest jet stream pattern. The hot ridge down here, this disparity of temperatures of some 30 to 40 degrees. Amazing we're able to do that in summertime across the heartland. So that is the story. So one boundary through the Great Lakes region, cleanup and recovery, where we had severe weather and flooding rainfall over this part of the Corn Belt here as the week wears on. And as the week wears on, here comes another prod of northward expanding heat clashing into the cool air here. Here's the jet stream pattern, and again you get these storm clusters, all or nothing, bowed out from the Black Hills to the Ohio Valley, heavy and severe. But at least we've got rain at times, and significant rain, and especially last week in some of the worst drought areas of Wisconsin and Michigan. The atmosphere is capped off. It's just too hot to make anything organized across Texas, back into the southwestern states, maybe Baja with a system offshore into the Pacific. Even the atmosphere here is capped off largely across the Gulf Coast, preventing any tropical systems. And I tell you what, record-setting warmth in the Gulf of Mexico. Those waters are bath-like, but nothing cooking in the tropics for now. Here's the heat expanding northward, the jet stream interacting, and more of these storm clusters generally lined up I-70 on northward. Again, they could be heavy and severe.
Take us through the eastern Corn Belt, Greg, all the way to the Atlantic seaboard. What do you see next week?
Boy, I tell you what, cleanup, recovery, that historic flooding in Vermont and New Hampshire and New England, they were dry, not anymore. So again, assessment continues on in some ag operations as well into this part of the country with another cold front on the move, but it's more progressive and it's moving. Warmth across the Ohio Valley, a couple of frontal boundaries over the northern and western Corn Belt, and a trough again that will lift northward. Here's the jet stream, and here is this hot weather arced from the central and southern Corn Belt on southward. Low to mid 90s, cooler up to the north, disturbances along it. And here we go again. Storm clusters, all or nothing, heavy and severe, but again, nibbling away despite the hail and severe and all that, and dryness and drought across parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Here's the showers and thunderstorms for the southeastern part of the country, the southwest Atlantic, the Gulf, unusually quiet for the time of year, likely to stay that way as well with scattered showers and thunderstorms through Florida. The atmosphere just too doggone hot from the Delta on westward.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We're taking a look at the forecast with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, what do you expect to see next week from that precipitation? Who's going to get what at the end of the day?
It's a rinse and repeat again. The haves will get more of it. The have-nots, well, maybe a little more optimistic here as the week wears on. Nice to see over the past week some sense of organized moisture through Wisconsin and Michigan. It's been the central and southern Corn Belt, parts of the plains that have taken the lumps on these derecho-driven, severe weather-generating clusters of showers and thunderstorms. Had them last week across the Corn Belt. We'll get them again this week with easily another inch or two and pretty decent coverages. Iowa, central and southern Corn Belt. Note the severe potential on that west-northwest to east-southeast jet stream pattern. Plain States, Corn Belt into the mid-Atlantic region. More wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard. Don't need any more of this coming off the historic and devastating flooding in the northeast of New England. We may generate a thunderstorm or two, largely dry-based over the south and southwest up across the Sierra, and spotty at best, quarter to half inch in the Pacific Northwest.
Greg, as you look at that last full week in July, what does your temp outlook look like?
For now, and as we see it, the hot ridge, which will dominate from the southwest into the southern plains and Gulf Coast this week, retrogrades back westward as we move on through the last few days of the month of July. Some lingering cool air across the upper Midwest Canadian prairie. And once again, you get this ribbon that runs the jet stream winds along the northern end of the hot ridge. It'll run from Big Sky country into the southern reaches of New England. So what do you expect? More storm clusters, all or nothing. And it's amazing we keep the severe weather season going even in July and just about August here for parts of the Corn Belt, Canadian Prairie, St. Lawrence River Valley. A little drier than usual down through Florida. That may be good news for some folks. Normal precip over the southern plains and a fetch of tropical moisture off the Pacific into the Rio Grande, including Baja.
Greg, when we get to August, where do you see that hot ridge moving?
For now, as we see it, and we're keeping an eye on temperatures and reproductive parts of the beans, and yeah, this is pretty manageable. Slow up on growing degree day units, but again, no major stress out there apart from what we've been dealt with already. The warmth over the Gulf Coast, southeastern part of the country, a little ridging across the Pacific Northwest, and again, a slingshot and a little troughiness, this U-shaped bending over the middle part of the country, the upper level winds. So you keep the moisture a-going. We have talked about it, been on board that we'll continue to improve and ease down the dryness and drought even in this El Nino setup. And that's the story. Upper Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic region, normal precip over the southern plains. High plains areas a little bit drier than usual along the divide on westward. And we'll keep an eye on the Pacific this go around the summertime season for some tropical systems there.
Well, and Greg, summer keeps moving on as we get into the middle part of August, that week of August 7th. What do you expect to see?
Yeah, sometimes that summertime season goes a little faster than we would like, and sometimes we get to the 4th of July and we think summertime is over with. No, not by our calculations. And there's still lots of summertime on the maps and charts here for the southern plains into the southeastern states. Here is this hot ridge this time over this part of the country, and note the disparity of temperatures from below average through the Canadian prairie. The heat down here, and we were already into this position, by the way, and with a west to east jet stream pattern, you certainly know what will be playing out here, and that will be an active weather pattern, not only down across parts of the southwestern sections of the country and what's going to be a disappointing monsoon season, mind you, the divide on westward below normal precip, but an active weather pattern continues on northern and central plains and especially Corn Belt locales into the northeast of New England, unfortunately, and down across the areas of southeastern states, including Florida. So it promises to be a busy beginning to first half of the month of August while the tropics in the Atlantic stay quiet.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
In Max's Tractor Shed this week, where they used to line up the B-52s, they plan to bring in a bunch of D-21s in a few days. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants farmers are made to make it last. Well, they built on the east central Illinois prairie in 1917 an Air Force base, Chanute Air Force Base. It served the nation very well during that World War I era and World War II on through the Vietnam War era. The base was decommissioned in 1993 and it was made into a municipal airport. And that has been the home of the half-century of progress since the year 2005. This year, where the B-52s used to land, they plan to line up a bunch of D-21s. Alice Chalmers D-21s. A tractor with almost 100 horsepower on the drawbar, as we recall. They made them between 1963 and 1969. And the goal is to have more than 250 of those D-21s at this year's half-century of progress. We know there's at least one coming from as far as 600 miles away. We hear from our friend Bobby Voss, the AGCO dealer in North Carolina. He plans to bring one almost all the way from Fort Bragg to the old Chanute Air Force Base. We look forward to seeing that lineup of great vintage tractors made in West Allis, Wisconsin at this year's half-century show starting August 24th. Mark Stock will be there, I'm sure. Here's our weekly report from Mark at Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. The collector car auction is Monday. 370 unbelievable collector cars, motorcycles, and pickups will sell to the highest online bidder. Cars are located in Carthage, Illinois. Jim and Carla Witter are from Coal Valley, Illinois, and their retirement auction is on July the 18th. Items include a Featherlight 24-foot aluminum livestock trailer, John Deere 4440 tractor, and a like-new Schuler HF255 feed wagon. John Eschleman is from Benson, Illinois, and his retirement auction is on July the 20th, selling a John Deere 670 combine, John Deere 8295R mechanical front tractor, and a 1999 Kenworth T800 semi-truck. Robert and Beverly Beck, they are from Dallas, South Dakota. Their retirement sale also on July the 20th, 150 items, selling a John Deere 7230R mechanical front tractor, a John Deere S670 combine, John Deere 1770 24-row 30 planter, and a like-new NDE vertical feeder wagon. All this equipment sells next week, Max. Check it out at bigiron.com. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone at the half-century of progress in a couple weeks.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. It might be mid-July, dog days of summer, but some folks are getting excited about the school year starting back up. One of them is Carson Calvin. He's the new secretary of the Missouri State FFA. And Carson, you're looking forward to seeing FFA students across the state of Missouri?
Absolutely.
Hard to believe it'll be here before we know it. Carson, where in Missouri did you grow up?
I'm originally from Troy, Missouri, which is in the northeast part of the state, about an hour north of St. Louis.
And as I understand, growing up, you've had your sights on becoming an officer in the FFA. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. My dad is actually an agricultural education teacher and has been my FFA advisor. So growing up with him, I went to multitude of events throughout the FFA and got to see state officers in actions and knew that that was something that I wanted to do when I was older.
So as you've been pursuing this path, Carson, what sort of leadership opportunities has FFA given you to prepare you for the state officer role?
FFA has given me a lot of opportunities to prepare for this role, whether it would be those career and leadership development events, public speaking competitions, and even leadership academies that Missouri FFA offers, such as HIMAX and HYPE academies, which is for freshmen and going and juniors in our association to apply to. And it introduces you to advocacy skills and allows you the ability to network with leaders in the agricultural industry.
That is a great opportunity out there. As you look forward to this next year, Carson, what are you most excited about working with the students?
I'm most excited about getting outside of my home chapter and my home area and networking with students from Northwest Missouri, Southeast Missouri, Central Missouri, and Southwest Missouri, because there's very different facets of the agricultural industry all throughout the Show Me State. And so getting outside of Northeast Missouri, where I'm used to, it'd be great to learn more things about students and about agriculture, while also connecting with all members of our state association.
Lots of diversity across Missouri. Carson, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
It's no surprise that Max Armstrong is a bit of a fan of red tractors. Recently, he had the opportunity to go over to Grand Island, Nebraska for the Red Power Roundup, and while he was there, he met a young tractor restorer named Sam Hoops. He was standing there with a tractor that initially belonged to his grandpa, but now he's put in the work to bring it back to life.
Was my grandpa's. He bought it brand new in '59, and then once he passed away, I bought it, and then just this last year, I restored it and overhauled the entire engine on it.
How old were you when you really started looking at that tractor and thinking, I may want this someday?
Oh, I always looked over at his place and thought it was a cool tractor, and then once he passed away, I thought, you know, I gotta have it. And he bought it brand new, first one, so I thought that was really unique.
How tough was the restoration? Obviously, it had shown the wear of time. I noticed in the before picture you have over there.
Yeah.
Did it sit outside at all?
No, it was mainly an inside shed tractor. Although it was a loader tractor, so it did get some abuse.
A loader takes its toll, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. And then the engine was pretty rough, so I overhauled the whole engine, bored it over 10 thousandths, and then put new pistons and new head and some new valves in it. So.
How long did it take you to do the restoration? When did you start and when did you complete it?
I started it about last spring, and then I finished it in the fall, 9-month process.
So you did it for the FFA Tractor Restoration Contest, I understand.
Yes, at first I did not, but then I ended up going after that for my proficiency in my mechanics business and took it to state and ended up winning at state with it and just submitted nationals yesterday. So.
Oh my goodness, you've been on a fast track with it.
Yes.
You have to keep very good records, do you not, for that contest? As I recall, having judged it one year, the records, photographs that are taken along the way are very important.
Yes, every day you work on it, you submit some type of journal and what hours you put in it, and then all your money expenses or income on it you put into your records on your AET.
Quite often I know in the past individuals or teams have had some help from the local community, some guidance from maybe a tradesman or a farmer in the area. What about your effort? Did somebody help you?
A lot of the help that I got was mainly over the phone, just calling guys, asking them how they recommend doing it. But big help of it was my old ag teacher, Ron Rickster. He helped out with teaching me how to take apart engines, and then he was the main reason I was able to overhaul this engine by myself. So, and then of course help from my family and friends.
Were there any parts you had to acquire, Sam, or maybe fabricate that were missing?
Yeah, there was a couple parts on the 3-point that I had redo and make my own of, and then a couple of the parts I had search out for the engine online. So
where did you learn the skills? In the shop at school?
Yes, in the shop at school, and then we do a lot of repair and maintenance on our farm, so I was used to the jobs and process of it. So,
do you think going forward in that family farm you'll help handle those responsibilities in the future?
Yes, I plan on it, coming back and farming and helping out with the repair and maintenance business.
Thank you, Max, and congratulations, Sam. That is a sharp-looking tractor with a lot of life left in it. Folks, if seeing those pictures of the Red Power Roundup have you itching to get to a farm show, well, mark your calendars. August 29th, 30th, and 31st, Decatur, Illinois. It's Farm Progress Show 2023. Visit the website, farmprogressshow.com. Get tickets, get more information, and be sure to tune in next week to This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back with more right here.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.